gigs, nerds and gig lovers. I'm Kirky, your gig mistress. You've heard me mention this band before, and I am so pleased to welcome you, Dave from Spartan Warrior. How you doing, Dave? You all right?
All right, good. Nice to be here, Chris. How are you doing?
I'm really well, thank you, lovely. Now, I just want to point out, before we started recording, Dave did point out he wanted me to do a little bass solo instead of doing a proper intro, which isn't going to happen. Sorry, guys. And I'm certainly not going to sing.
I just thought it would be something unique for you, some sort of signature tune that you could,
funky.
Absolutely ideal.
Honestly, do you know, can you imagine doing it? I think I would die. I die doing this anyway. I mean, you're a performer. You and Spartan Warrior have been around in the music industry since what, 1980?
No, you make me feel really old. Yeah, just play the bass guitar, will you?
All right, but honestly,
been around.
Tell me, been around a little bit. Tell me a little bit about, because obviously Spartan Warrior, one of the reasons I wanted you guys on is because you're so good, but also you're kind of legendary. It's particularly on the Northeast music scene. You know, you guys were signed to Roadrunner Records back in the day. So tell me a little bit about it. Tell me, for those who are new wave of British heavy metal fans, who will already know who you are because that's how it rolls. Tell me a little bit about you.
I think that it all came about because I joined a band called Deceiver in about 1979, which featured the guys who were to be Spartan Warriors bass player and drummer. And I mean, at that point, we were basically a covers band in 50%, 60% covers, 50 to 40% original material. But it was nothing like what Spartan Warrior were going to be doing when they started writing and recording. It was very Hendrix and Sabbath influenced, very sort of blues based, And the guitar players really weren't doing much anyway, which was probably why the guys were going down that route. We pulled my brother Neil on board early 1980, I would guess it was. And it wasn't long after that Neil pulled his friend on board on guitar as well, a guy called John Stormont, who went on to do all sorts of fantastic things with the new wave of British heavy metal anyway. And it was once that lineup was complete that the guys decided to change direction because Neil and John were writing songs in a completely different way to the way the band had been used to writing and playing. And they decided to have a change of name. So we had the change of name, which is a complete story in its own right anyway. And from that point, we started writing the sort of stuff that featured on the first album. The first album and the whole Spartan Warrior journey really began because Neil was friends with someone who had heard on the grapevine that Guardian Studios, which was run by a guy called Terry Gavigan, was looking for local bands, Northeast bands, to record songs for a compilation album that he was going to do, which was going to be called Pure Overkill. So we decided to record a live rehearsal, basically all of the songs that we'd been writing and performing up to that point. So we banged it all down on a C90 or whatever the hell it was then, and took it along to Terry's studio and knocked on the door and introduced ourselves and gave him the tape and had a sit down in his mixing room and what have you. And he listened to the stuff, decided he liked it, and asked us if we'd record two songs for the Pure Overkill album. He picked the two songs that he wanted to record, and the deal that we struck with him was that we would pay for our own studio time. We'd go in and record those two songs across a single session. He would obviously record the songs, he'd mix them, and he would bear the cost through Guardian of pressing, artwork, and releasing the album and all the distro and bits and pieces around that. So that was how we ended up doing two tracks for the Pure Overkill album. It was on the back of that that Terry spoke to us and said that we generated a bit of a buzz we never got to find out where the buzz was coming from or what the interest in the band was. But he said there was some significant interest in the band from those two songs, and he asked us if we'd be interested in doing a full album. That was a bit of a departure from the way Terry normally worked, because Terry normally brought bands into the studio and recorded 7-inch singles and put them out, but the bands rarely got to do an album. But he came straight to us and said, I'd like you to do an album. And the deal was exactly the same. The band paid for its own studio time. We record 2 songs across a session, which usually started on a Saturday afternoon and ran across the 5 on the Sunday morning. You know, it was a proper full-on overnight brutal process. You know, and then Terry would pretty much mix them on the spot. So the whole album essentially was done across 5 sessions, 2 songs per session, including the 2 songs that we put out on the Pure Overkill album. And Terry then decided that he wanted to release the Steel and Chains album as it became, which I think came out in about 1983. The Roadrunner story came just before Steel and Chains was released.
Right. So I remember Steel and Chains, that I'd heard on the grapevine somewhere that actual record labels were looking for that to be re-released. Is that true?
Yes.
Yeah.
I get usually half a dozen emails every 6 months, at least every 6 months. Sometimes there are more emails than that from labels in Germany, South America, Greece, just everywhere, asking about a reissue of the Steel and Chains album. And so far, we just haven't been able to do anything with it for a whole host of reasons, really. I mean, at the moment, we're signed to a German label called Pure Steel that did the last album.
Yeah.
And they came to us when they wanted to sign us and said that their plan had been to put out the new album, but they also wanted to reissue Steel and Chains as well. We did talk quite extensively about that, but it ended up being the sort of conversation where I felt as if I was banging my head against a brick wall.
Yes.
And it was them basically saying to me, we would like to do this. We would like to put the album out. That's okay. There are a number of things that you need to do. One of the things that you need to do is to contact some of the original members and speak to them about it, because I'm not here to negotiate on behalf of anybody else.
Yes.
I just don't think that that's my role. But by the same token, I'm not the sort of person, even though I could just say, yeah, put it out, I'm not the sort of person that wants to screw some of your friends and ex-bandmates by just doing what I want to do without their approval.
Yes.
Or without them agreeing terms, whatever those terms might be, you know. But I got into sort of a circular conversation, shall I say, with Pure Steel about what they wanted me to do, and I was just saying, no, these are the steps that you need to take. I'm not here to broker a deal for them, and I'm not here to be your negotiator.
Yes.
If you want to do something, you either do what I'm asking you to do, or you do what you think is necessary to get to the point where you're going to release the album. But beyond that, whatever you decide to do, whether you take the steps I suggest or you don't, the responsibility is yours. It's not my responsibility. You know, so
it's so easy for. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It's so easy for ego to take over. As a, you know, people assume that one person, particularly, they will always go to a front person.
Yeah.
They will. It's so easy to ego to take over and go, well, actually, it's my project. I'm going to do what I want with it. And it's really great that you didn't do that. That you still have that respect for everybody who's been a part of it.
Well, I mean, there are people who have done just that, and there are people who've said to me, just put it out. Just put it out and do what you want, you know. I mean, at the end of the day, Neil and I are both original members. You know, we we were an integral part of the band, and we're the only original members that are keeping the band alive at the moment. We're the ones that are going out and gigging.
Yes.
We're the ones that still record. We're the ones that are still putting our name on Spartan Warrior.
Yes.
But it just has never sat easy with me to not consult people or to put people out, and that comes with its own problems as well. I mean, I mentioned before that I get lots of emails asking, from neighbours asking about reissues and things like that. And these days, I just tell people it's not on the cards. I'm not saying it'll never happen. I'm just saying I've got better things to do with my time at the moment. There's not a problem with the second album with the Roadrunner album, because Roadrunner control that. That's been reissued. It's had digipacks and been licensed in South America and all over the place. Although I gather it's still a bit of a rarity at the moment. But we first of all don't have any control of that, and secondly, that for some reason, even though it's a very well respected album, and people ask us to play songs from it that I personally despise, it doesn't seem to have the same sort of status as the Steel and Chains album. That's the one that people constantly ask for a reissue.
It was a very sort of impactful album, like at the time, new wave of British heavy metal, particularly Northeast based. It was huge. It was a huge scene, and you were a huge part of that. And right up until sort of you split in 1985, I think that Steel and Chains album, it is very impactful, and it's it is a part of not only British music history, but Northeast wise, incredible. And like you say, a lot of bands nowadays are starting their own record labels. They're trying not to go down the signed by another record label route because of not having control of it, because of the legalities, because of then trying to get reissues and things like that. There's been cases where other musicians have had their art taken away from them because they've lost all rights to it. Is that, this may be a really out there question, but would you consider releasing albums yourself? Like, you can't do, a Spartan Warrior album, but you can maybe do, would you consider it? Would you start your own record label, or is that just not your thing?
I don't think we start our own label as such. As far as the reissue of the Steel and Chains album is concerned, that's an open playing field, really, because there are all manner of labels that have expressed an interest in it over the years. So that's an avenue that we could go down as and when circumstances and the time's right. Or we could do a self reissue for that. I mean, the possibilities are sort of endless, really. The second album's a different entity because the rights with that, I would imagine, rests with Roadrunner still. As I said before, they've seen fit to exercise all sorts of licensing options on that, which is their prerogative, and that's absolutely fine. The third album, Behind Closed Eyes, we were signed to a label called Iron Age for that, but we signed purely a one album deal. I don't even know whether or not that record label exists anymore, or what the situation would be with regard to that. But I mean, as I mentioned before, Kirsty, the most interest from people seems to be the Steel and Chains album. So if anything's going to happen in the near or distant future, it's going to be centered around Steel and Chains album and a new album. And that, I mean, there has been talk of a live album as well, but I mean, I don't really know where we are or where we would go with that. Certainly, insofar as a reissue is concerned, the world's our oyster. Yeah, because it's a past album with an open playing field, really, in terms of reissue and release. Whereas if we were to do a new album, which is on the cards, at the moment we're still signed to Pure Steel.
Right.
So Pure Steel have the option on the next album. So Steel and Chains is one thing.
New album.
The next album is Pure Steel if they want to take up the option.
Do you know, I think the new, I know I heard about potential of a new album, and the thing is, your back catalogue is, it's really clever. Like, it has different vibes to it as well. So like, Behind Closed Eyes, it's almost a little bit doomy. Like when I listened to that one, it's just got that little bit more doomy edge. You know, it kind of, there's a few Paradise Lost kind of vibes going on there, and the artwork's that little bit sort of, and it works. Can I ask the awkward question? Why, when you have all this interest and all this going for you, did you split?
Right, well, we did Steel and Chains. That was recorded in the can, ready to go. It was always going to be a Guardian album,
Yes.
so we wanted to put the album out before Steel and Chains was released. I think I mentioned on the back of the two tracks for Pure Overkill. Terry told us that there was a lot of industry interest and there was a bit of a buzz about the band. Never really went into any great detail about that, but then mentioned that we were looking to go on tour with two major acts. One was, I'm not going to say who they were, one was a major British act with a Deep Purple connection, and the other one was an Australian act. We sort of talked about that for a little bit, and Terry told us that there was a Dutch label called Roadrunner, which was run at that point by a guy called Keith Vessels, who were very interested in the band, and he asked us to meet with Keith with a view to signing a deal with them, because we had no deal with Guardian. You know, the deal with Guardian by and large was you guys pay for your studio time, I'll put your album out, and that was the extent of it, really. You know, so Terry wanted to introduce us to Keith and Roadrunner. He set up a meeting in Newcastle, I think at the Swan Hotel. It took us out for lunch, and by the time we finished lunch, we signed a deal with Roadrunner. Roadrunner wanted the Steel and Chains album, and if they'd taken it, I think that things might have been pretty explosive.
Yeah.
As it was, Terry was adamant that he wanted to put Steel and Chains out himself. That was fair enough. It was his prerogative, really. You know, that was absolutely fine. It was the way that was always intended. We didn't know, of course, how big a label Roadrunner were going to be.
Yeah.
Eventually, you know. So Keith had spoken to Terry about putting Steel and Chains out. Terry had said, no, it's a Guardian release. So Keith signed us for the second album. Of course, the knock-on effect of that was that we had to go pretty much straight back into the studio. So we were virtually in the studio by the time that Steel and Chains hit the shops. So the direct consequence of that was whatever interest had been expressed in us, whatever support slots had been available on tour, we couldn't take anywhere because we had to go back into the studio and record. I mean, that came with its own difficulties as well, because we pretty much just done Steel and Chains. So what we considered to be our best songs had gone on Steel and Chains. I mean, we had a load of other stuff as well that we'd been sort of gigging live that hadn't made it onto the Steel and Chains album, which then became prime contenders for the second release. But in retrospect, you know, I can't help but thinking it was just a little bit too quick, and that maybe if we'd been given a little bit more time, we could have generated some better material, and might have made a better job of it. But it is what it is. I mean, we ended up going in and recording the second album. It was quite an experience and fraught with problems in a number of means. It was still quite an enjoyable experience. I mean, Roadrunner had paid Guardian and Terry to allow us to record there, and for Terry to produce the album again, as he had done on Steel and Chains. But Terry took a completely different approach to recording. I always call it the Def Leppard approach to Pyromania, but without the money, you know. So we So we sort of seemed to spend a huge amount. We only had limited studio time, a limited budget, which we were pretty much oblivious to anyway. But we went in and we started to put the bass and drum tracks down. I mean, we pretty much on Steel and Chin's been used to recording live,
Yeah.
pretty much live, you know, and everything was done within 2-3 takes tops. But when we did the second album, Terry decided he wanted to do the bass and drums together, but then he got the notion of recording some of the drum parts completely separately. So on some of the tracks, it wasn't a drummer playing a hit; it was a drummer playing mounted toms or floor toms, or a single kick or a hi hat, or he was just doing the cymbals, you know, stuff like that. It was really quite laborious. It sounded at one point as if it was going to sort of pay dividends, because he does get quite a big bottom end bass and drum sound on the second album, but it came at a bit of a price, because we sort of struggled in terms of time to get the guitars down.
Yeah.
And then more so to get the vocals down. I think I did most of the vocals for the second album across maybe a night and a half into the early hours of the morning. I mean, I forget which the track is on the second album. I think it's Son of a Bitch on the second album. And I was completely shocked. My throat and voice were in tatters, because I'd been on the go for about 15 hours. And when the guys came in and listened to it, I think I remember at the time being sort of quite pleased, because it sounded a little bit sort of Dee Snyderish.
Yeah.
A little bit sort of Twisted Sisterish, who was sort of a breaking band then. I thought that sounds a bit different. But they all sort of shook their heads and just said, "You just sound screwed. You just sound completely. You don't sound like you. That's not what you like, and that's not what the band's like." And anyway, so the upshot was that we encountered some time restraint problems in the studio on the second album, which caused a bit of friction with Terry, and it caused a friction between some of the band members as well. There were occasions when the guys were in recording guitar parts, and I would be at home. I'd get a phone call at 2 a.m. from Terry, said, "Oh, there's a problem. Paul's not doing this," or "Paul said he won't play that," and I'm thinking it's got nothing to do with me. I'm just a singer.
I just want to sing.
Yeah, and it's 2 a.m. It's 2, and I can sort of recall turning up at the studio on occasions. I can't even remember the specifics now, but just hearing Terry say there's a problem, you know, and he sort of said things like, "You know what they've only gone and done now, don't you?" And I'm thinking, what's the problem now? And it was very much like that towards the end of the recording process. It was, you know, look what they've gone and done now. Look what they haven't gone and done now. You know, Paul won't do this, Neil won't do that, and it just went on and on and on and on. And then it got to the point of there's loads of interest in the band, and I mean, I was working. A couple of the other guys were working as well. A couple were still on the dole at the time, I think. And I remember having a meeting with Terry, and it was a case of, you know, you guys need to be thinking about committing full time now. You need to think about packing your jobs in. I can sort of wage for David, I can sort of wage for this one, but you guys will have to do without. But I'm thinking, oh, hang on a minute, you know, and it's just, what on earth's going on with this? And I hadn't long. I must remember this actually. I'm going to say this definitely with certainty, and hope my wife sees this. I got married on the 23rd of June 1984, so it's my 40th wedding anniversary next week, right? So I remember the time frame sort of exactly. So I hadn't long been married. That's the point. I hadn't long been married, and bought my first house. And of course, all this is going on. And I mean, back then I worked at the court. I was training to be a court clerk, and that came with a sort of a 3-year sandwich course while I was working full time, studying at Manchester Poly. So I'm sort of trying to balance that with the band stuff, and then you sort of hear the shit that's going on. He won't do this. He won't do that. Oh, you won't believe what they've done now. Oh, there's a buzz around the band. You need to pack your job. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute. This just
Yeah.
doesn't sort of sit right with me, and it just got quite, I don't know, quite stressful,
Yeah.
you know. And I mean, I mean, I think the final straw was, I mean, we'd always talked from the early stages of the second album that it was going to be called Assassin.
Right.
That was going to be, there was a track on the album called Assassin. The album was going to be called Assassin, and it was going to have artwork, which was sort of conceptual around that sort of thing, you know. And we recorded the album. We told Terry, this is the concept, this is the album title, blah, blah, blah. You know, you need to commission artwork around that. And as far as we were concerned, it had all been passed on to Roadrunner. I mean, I don't know yet whether Roadrunner were given the information or they weren't, but it never happened because the next thing that I knew was I'm walking into Virgin Records in Sunderland and the album's there and it's got a bird on the front and it's self-titled.
Yep.
You know, I was like, what the hell is that? We didn't ask for egg. We didn't ask for egg. We were absolutely bloody seething. Absolutely seething. It was just another thing
Yeah.
that had sort of gone wrong. And then when we got the album home and listened to it, because we hadn't been present during any of the mixing sessions or anything like that. And some of the songs that we put down, I don't know what the actual running times are, but I mean, they would have been about 3 minutes long, something like that. And Terry had cut and paste lead breaks to extend the tracks. Instead of just putting another track on the album, he sort of concocted this Frankenstein mix to extend stuff. And it just wasn't what we envisioned at all. You know, I mean, if we'd done Steel and Chains 2 and just played the stuff as it was meant to be, I would have been perfectly happy with that. But I just can't even listen to it now. And yet, and I think I mentioned this in the early part of our conversation, people seem to love it. I don't think it's got the iconic status that Steel and Chains has, but people absolutely love the material. And I'm not even going to say what the song is. I mean, there's a song on there that we don't play live. No one can ever get me to play it live. It's absolutely one of the worst songs it's the worst song I've ever written. Might be one of the worst songs I've ever heard in my life. But people ask for it at gigs and they love it. I'm thinking, what is wrong with you?
No.
This is just horrible.
But this is the thing, you're loved. You are a very loved band, you know. And yeah, I'm sorry, but it's a great album. I like it. But the difference between an album being released and what you as an artist produce and not having that control and what somebody else decides to do with it. I think as a musician, this is the traumatic part of it. You sometimes, a lot of musicians now won't let control of that. They want to do it from beginning to end. Because of those experiences that bands like yourself had, you know, the whole control and not getting what you want, not getting the album cover. But it is, and you see that T-shirt everywhere. You see fans all over the world. Yeah.
I mean, you asked me why it was that it ended in '85. I mean, it didn't end for all of the guys in '85, but it ended for me. You probably got from what I've just said. I was really, really, really stressed out about the whole thing. And you know, when people sort of say to me, "You don't need to work anymore," and I've just bought my first house and got married, and I'm looking at my day job and thinking, "Well, I've got a career in law potentially here, or I've got this, which is an unknown quantity." Sometimes you've got to, if you haven't got the guts that it takes to make commitments, then you shouldn't really be in the game and you shouldn't be holding the other guys back. And that's exactly how I felt. I didn't have the guts to commit to it. I don't have any regrets about that because I had a great career in laws, it turned out, and I've come back to the band and we had some great times and great success over the last 14 years, more than we ever did back then, really. So I don't have any regrets about quitting beyond the fact that I felt bitterly disappointed for the guys because I felt then, and I still feel now, as if I let them down because it was really hard to say I I just can't commit to this. I've got this other aspect to my life which has certainty, and this doesn't have certainty. And whether I've got, whether I had more to lose than some of that, I probably did have more to lose than some of them. And maybe I was a bit spiteful and a bit selfish about it. Maybe I was just being particularly astute about it. I don't know, but I did feel really, really bad about it then, and I felt really, and I still feel bad about it now, to the point where when we got back together again, 2008, 2009, I actually sat down with Neil and the other two original guys and said, "Look, you've every reason not to have me here, but I will, if you have me here now, I will be the last one. I'll be the last one to walk away." And all of the guys in the current lineup know that as well. That as long as they want to do it, I'll continue to do it. Unless something happens where physically or mentally I can't do it, that's a different thing. But as long as I'm able to do it, they know that I'm going to be there. I'm not going to be the one that spoils it. Whether it's spoiling an opportunity or spoiling the lifestyle or just spoiling the fun. I'm not going to do that ever again.
The thing is, though, the music industry, it is you've got to take, and not always is that right to do. And you did what was right for you. And I think the new lineup, like you've said to them, you're going to be the last man standing effectively, but you're with your brother as well. And it must have been hard being in a band with your brother, and then obviously, having to make those decisions. Because, your brother is a very musically dedicated person as well. I see a lot of talk about his guitars and things like that. And he's a very, very talented guitarist, incredibly so. Having all that on you as a musician. And I think this is a lot of the things that people don't understand. Being a musician isn't all glamour, and it's not all, and I've said this in every other, interview I've done. It's not all glitz and glamour. It's not all party. It's not all, it is literally living on bare bones. It's putting every penny you've got into it. It's putting every last penny you've got into a show that try and gets you somewhere where you want to be. And that is not for everybody. It's not for me. It would have never been for me, And the thing is, as well, the UK music industry is a very different thing to what European music industry is and the music tastes. Now, as it turns out, you guys, you can pack out trillions, and I've seen you pack out trillions, and I've been to see you many, many times in trillions. But you can go and play a huge festival abroad, huge festivals and things like that. Do you think that that is the UK music industry, or do you think that's just musical tastes? And how does that make you feel when you go to a festival and you see all these fans that absolutely adore you, but then you come home and you play a smaller, don't get us wrong, I love Trillions, it's a great venue, a smaller venue, but still have dedicated fans? How does that make you feel?
It's good. It's great. I mean, if you're packing somewhere else, whether it's a festival overseas or whether it's at Trails or at Bannerman's in Edinburgh, places like that, if you're packing the place out, you're doing something right, and it's really much appreciated, guys. Thanks very much. But it's when you see the scene dying around you in other places and with other bands, and that's where I find it sort of quite hard, and that's where I see a little bit of a distinction between the UK and Europe. Although not quite a few European fans that I'm speaking to now are telling me things are just as dire over there. Perhaps beyond the festival scene. So maybe places like Trillions in mainland Europe aren't doing quite so well now with bands who are playing at our sort of level. I think that I think the new wave of British heavy metal is a bit of an oddity and a bit of a unique thing, really, in terms of the audience that it attracts. I know that there are a lot of new wave of British heavy metal fans in the UK, and I might be wrong, but I get the impression that it's a family that's dotted around. There isn't a big contingent in any one place that's sort of dotted around, and I suspect that even if it's to a slightly lesser degree, that the same is true in mainland Europe. The sort of family of rock and heavy metal fans who are dotted around, but they come together when it's festival time. So a lot of the festivals that we play at draw big crowds for two reasons. One, the festival becomes a hub for a particular set of bands or a particular genre. It becomes a fan base that's drawn primarily by the headliner, which is as you'd expect it to be. But the other bands on the bill usually complement that and draw their own fan base if they're not already a fan of the headliner as well. So you tend to get sort of quite big turnouts for these things. Trillions is a good one for us in the UK, but I think that's probably in Europe as well as in the UK. Bands at our level have to be really careful about where you play and when you play, because we can go to a festival. I mean, we usually first, second or third on the bill. Let's say a 6 or 7 band bill, something like that. And the place tends to get packed anyway because people are coming to a festival situation. Some people are specifically there to see us or to see somebody else, but by and large, the bill attracts the crowd across the board. It's not any one band that are creating a pull. But in the UK and I think mainland Europe as well, when you go out as a lone band, whether it's with support or with another single band above you, you've got to be really careful, because the pockets of fans for those bands, the pockets of fans for those particular genres are dotted around throughout the country. So I mean, here they're dotted around through the UK, mainland Europe, they're dotted around in France and Germany, they're in Greece, in Poland, they're in Belgium, all those different places. You'll get them coming together in the UK to a lesser extent, and in mainland Europe for a festival where there are 6 or 7 bands on, most of whom they want to see, but you won't get them all congregating in a particular isolated location, say, and I'm not decrying the particular scenes for these regions, but say if we went to Manchester on a Saturday night, I think we'd probably pull a decent crowd in. If we went on a Wednesday night, I'm not so sure that would be the case, because you're relying upon an element of, one, it's a non-school night, and two, people sort of travelling in from sort of surrounding areas as well. Yeah. And I think the fact that the fans of the bands in the particular genre, the fact that they are so dotted around the country, dotted around mainland Europe, makes it difficult for them to congregate in a single place for a standalone gig. If that makes sense.
Absolutely makes sense.
The knock-on effect of that for a band playing at our level is, if you want to tour Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, my personal view is I would be worried sick about Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I wouldn't be concerned about Friday. I wouldn't be concerned about Saturday. I'd be a little bit apprehensive about Sunday. But those other 4 school nights, I'd be thinking, who's going to come in here?
Yes,
it's different. It's different to Trails, because people know who we are and what we do. So going to Trails on a Thursday night isn't an issue for us. The real problem is drawing a decent crowd on a midweek night, or a Monday or a Tuesday, and when you can't guarantee that, you can't guarantee that you're not going to be putting your hand in your pocket and spending a fortune and effectively paying to play.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not interested in making any money. I'm 62. I've had a career in law. The whole musical side is a great distraction, and it's thoroughly enjoyable. but I've never got rich doing it. I'd go as far as say I've never made a penny doing it. But I can't go out on tour in the UK across 10 nighs and only play 2 gigs where there's a decent crowd in.
Yeah.
And the other nights I'm playing to one man and his dog and footing a £150 fuel bill and a £300 Premier Inn.
Yeah.
You just can't do it. That's the reality, you know.
This is the music industry nowadays. I see it a lot. I see a lot of bands putting a lot of money out there to come and play a gig that's like 5 or 6 people that have shown up, and they make a huge loss. And by the end of it, you know, they're not only making a loss, they can't afford to live. They can't afford to live. Yeah. And you know, that is the sad state of, and I think you're probably right, not just the music industry here, but the music industry everywhere. I think, you know, particularly with sort of, you know, I mean, the guys that you have in the band at the moment, some of them are not just your members. Some of them have other bands. They're in other bands. They not have to, but they're in other bands. They have to work. If they want to stay in the music industry, they've got to work across 2 or 3, you know. I think Dan's in 5, isn't he? He's in like 4 or 5 bands.
I always lose count with Dan. I just lose count.
Always in a band somewhere.
I don't know whether he's in the States crushing people's skulls with some death metal or he's playing somebody's wedding or bar mitzvah. It's just how he is.
And Charlie or James, he's also drums for I think 2 other bands across genres, which then makes it difficult when you're touring because you've then got to try and get them on a day when they're either not working, not touring, not playing with, you know, there are other bands. I think it was Cruciate and Bone Tomb for Vegas, and obviously Risen Prophecy, and I can't remember the other one. I did write it down, but my handwriting's awful. Sorry, James. Sorry, Charlie. But there's this whole kind of thing of, you know, to make it work, like you say, midweek sales and advance ticket sales. People don't buy tickets in advance anymore. They just go, I'll just rock up on the night. You don't buy a ticket in advance. That band can't afford to put the gig on.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen loads of stuff on social media over the last couple of years where people are booking tours, and the guys will tell you if you speak. I turn to the rehearsal and shake and say, it's not going to happen. It can't possibly happen because they're not going to pull anybody in on a wet and windy Wednesday in bloody, I don't know, down the far end of nowhere. It just doesn't work like that, you know. So gigs are going to get pulled, gigs are going to get cancelled, you know. I mean, I've had loads of offers. I mean, like I said before, people for some reason when gigs are in the up, and people tend to come to me as the front man, the face of the band, and all that. And I get emails all the time, you know, offering us UK gigs. And the first conversation I have with people is, well, okay, but would love to come and play Carton Horses in London, iconic venue. Iron Maiden played there. Well, that doesn't mean anything to me. I don't care who played there. What I want to know is, can I afford to bring this band down to the Carton Horses and play? I'd love to play the Carton Horses. I'd love to play in London again. We sort of done it before when it was viable, but I can't afford to sort of bring a band down if you're not going to sell enough tickets, or if the sound man's going to take this amount of money, or the venue going to take that amount of money. You know, it just doesn't make any sense at all.
No. Is there anything else about touring that gets your goat? Is there anything else you find tough about touring? I have to ask this because there's a lot of bands who like being on the road, or don't necessarily like being on the road but do it anyway. I have to ask. I
can only speak for myself. I personally don't mind being on the road. I'm not a big fan of the travel situation. I mean, we played a festival in Germany called Truheim a few years ago, 2019, I think it must have been. I mean, I don't know what the geographical location is exactly, but it's absolutely bloody the far end of Germany, Bavaria, up in the bloody Alps or somewhere. It was miles away.
Good beer.
Great beer, but we set away from Neil's place at about 4 a.m. on a bank. It was August bank holiday weekend, I think it was. We said away at about 4 in the morning. I think Dan was the last pick, just off the A19. And the plan was to drive down to Dover to get the ferry across to Calais and then do the drive to Germany. And Charlie and myself and Neil were sharing the drive. So we set away at about 4, not really thinking that it was, first of all, Leeds Carling weekend, and it was also download weekend.
Oh my God.
And apart from the usual bank holiday traffic, so we had all of that to contend with. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I mean, I think the journey to Dover should really have been around about 4.5 to 5 hours. It took us 10.5 hours just to get to Dover. So we were sort of early hours of the Saturday morning, about 1 in midnight, 1 in the morning, something like that, when we did the ferry crossing to Calais. Then we had to drive through France, Belgium, all the way up the bloody top end of Germany. We didn't get to the hotel in Germany until 10:30 on Saturday morning. And I mean, it was setting aside the fact I was knackered. I hadn't realised. I had no idea what damage aircon can do to someone's voice. And when I got out of the car, I couldn't even speak. I couldn't utter a word. We just sort of staggered into the hotel. I ordered a big pot of black coffee and started drinking that. And I got in the shower, had a shower, and I lay down. And I got back in the shower again and turned the heat up and tried to sort of steam everything off. And then I got back into bed. We were due on stage at 5:30 in the afternoon.
Oh my God!
You know, I was literally backstage before the gig, sort of trying to warm myself up. I could feel my voice coming back just bit by bit by bit by bit, and eventually it was okay, thankfully. But it was a real shock to the system. So I don't like the travel. I mean, we have some great laughs. We have some bloody good laughs on the road and what have you. You know, whether it's aeroplane, ferry time, and or just even in the van. You know, we've had some absolutely brilliant times on the road, but I find it sort of physically draining because I'm an old guy now. You know, so I find it really, really hard, really tough.
It
That's
is.
the only thing.
It is. No, it totally is. Like, I remember, I mean, obviously, for those who haven't already clicked on, if you've not heard anything I've ever done before, Lamort, who is the bass player for Spartan Warrior, is my uncle. And back in the day, when my uncle used to be in various other bands, mainly, I think, Moriarty and the Sith, I used to go on the road with him. So I would be,
Nice.
17, 18, hanging around, you know. I used to find it knackering then. I was like a young, tiny little kid full of energy, and it was exhausting, you know, carrying boxes of merch and trying to set everything up. And just all I did was sit in the car. I didn't drive at all. But I remember like all the gear, loading it in and out, trying to carry everything, make sure everything get the venue, setting up and things like that. That was kind of, you know, how I spent my teens and 20s. And that's insane. It is an insane thing. And I think it's another thing that people don't understand about the music industry. You're not on a luxury tour bus liner. No, you're in a minivan that's crammed or a Ford Transit that's full of gear, and somebody's generally trying to squeeze in the back somewhere to make sure that you get them from venue to venue.
We did a couple of great shows last year. I think it was May last year. We played a headline show in Athens on the Friday night. We sold out. That was absolutely brilliant. Just a club show, but it was absolutely brilliant. But the following day, the Saturday, we were booked to play Horns Up Festival in a place called Trikala, which is a 500-mile drive.
Oh my God!
From Athens, you know. So we flew into Athens on Thursday, had a night off. We played the Athens headliner on the Friday night. Got back to our digs about 2 in the morning. We were on the road again with a Greek band. It's a Greek band called Abduction. Great band, great bunch of guys. But they were playing the festival with us. And the promoter had specifically pulled them on board, knowing that they were a great bunch of guys and spoke English, to sort of ferry us around between the headline slot and the festival show. So they picked us up at about 5 in the morning on the Saturday morning, and we drove this bloody awful journey. It just went on forever, all the way to Trikala, and we were penultimate band on, second headliner, We got back to our digs at about 3 in the morning, and the abduction guys picked us up at 5 to drive us back to Athens Airport for our flight home. And then when we got back to the UK, we had the drive from Stansted back to the northeast.
Yeah.
That's what it's about, really, and that's
Yeah.
what just kills you. It just kills you, We had a great laugh though.
It's good fun, innit? I bet you did,
Great
though, with
fun,
the guys. I have to ask, though, and I'm probably going to get absolutely rollocked for asking this. I know there's some nicknames kicking around the band. Obviously, I call Lamort. That's one of the things. But I've heard he's called Cheeky Satan, and I have to ask exactly why, because he's never told me this, and I'm going to out him and embarrass him on the internet. Of course I am.
I'm not telling you.
Ah, damn it! Tim, you're gonna have to tell us.
I'll tell you. No, I'll tell you. I'll not tell you the full story about as to how it came about. Cause
I was going to say I'm not going to want to know.
You will. I will tell you, but I'm not going. I'll not tell you publicly. But basically, as you probably appreciate, first of all, I think that he does look a little bit like Satan. He has that satanic air. I've never met Satan, so I don't really know. I mean, you might be a very nice person, I don't know what he looks like, but the imagery suggests that he's a Tim lookalike. So I imagine that Satan's got dark hair, and he's got a cheeky little beard, and those lovely little white teeth. So the cheeky Satan thing came about partly because we think he looks a little bit like Satan. But we also think that he lacks true evil. He doesn't possess true demonic status. He's more mischievous than malevolent. So
I would agree.
Yeah. So when he does something, it's more of a mischief than something sort of evil and to be feared.
Yeah, don't believe the chunky backers 5-string bass and the heavy bass lines.
No, absolutely.
And I've heard, and I may need to cut this one out, but Hollow Man? Who's Hollow Man?
Yeah. James Charlie, our drummer, is Hollow Man. That's it's an on the road food related thing. I mean, I personally think it's an affliction that he has. I mean, most of the guys are very much into food times on the road. They rarely seem to stop eating, but the top guy in the food consumption stakes on the road has got to be James. But the problem for Charlie seems to be whenever he fills up, he has to empty straight away. So it's almost as if his happy meal turns into an unhappy meal.
You regularly play with a lot of really cool bands that were in a very similar genre to you, and that you spend a lot of time with. That you said, I think in terms, I think you build friendships, don't you? I mean, last time I saw you, it was with sort of Avenger and Abaddon, and then Marquis de Sade, who was hilarious. I saw them when I was at Trillions, and the guy, I think it was I want to say Peter Godelier. Was saying how he one of them lived in Spain and he just flew in.
Yeah.
I've just flown in for tonight's gig, and I was like, no way. And he was like, yeah, I just wanted to come play trails. I'm having a great night, like that kind of thing. Is that important? Do you think that friendship's still important?
It certainly is for me. I mean, back in the day, we didn't really socialise with anybody else. We didn't really play gigs with anybody else. And I think most bands who you would speak to from that sort of era should be, I hope, would be candid enough to say that at best there was rivalry. At worst, there was sort of sheer animosity and disinterest in what anyone else was doing. I mean, we by and large didn't give anybody else a second thought. But I know that my attitude back then was very much, if I don't need to be with anybody else, I don't need to know what they're doing, I don't need to gig with them, I don't want to be their friend. I mean, they're shit compared to us, because you sort of 17, 18-year-olds, and it's just we the business screw everybody else. These days I really value the friendship of guys that I gig with. Partly because I admire them so much for what they're doing now and what they did then. Partly because they're just dead cool anyway. And partly because some of them, quite rightly, are just, well, the new wave of British heavy metal legends who I never thought I would get the gig with, get to meet, get to call me friend. I mean, the Raven guys. I saw Raven playing at a bar called the Old 29, which was one of our regular gigs at the 29, and it was as rough as hell. It was usually a Saturday afternoon gig just before the football match, and it really was as rough as hell. I saw Raven in there as a four-piece, and I saw them subsequently. I think it's Sunderland Mayfair, Newcastle Mayfair, as a three-piece when I think they just done the Rock Until You Drop album, so they were clearly going places. But I mean, I wasn't really interested in what Raven were doing. I was just about what we were doing. But I mean, I've had the absolute pleasure of gigging with Raven on a few occasions now on the festival circuit, and met John and Mark for the first time and talked about the old days and seeing them as I did in the crappy little bar in Sunderland Town Centre, and the great guys and legends, the legends, and they're there talking to me. You know, I mean, I know before we clicked the record, but we were talking about this, and I don't really like hanging around people like that too much, because I think that it usually happens at a gig, and I think it's their time, and they deserve to have their space pre-gig and post-gig. And I've said that to John Gallagher on at least one occasion. He's just like, "What are you talking about? Just sit down. What you mean? It's not a problem." Well, no, it really isn't a problem. Graham Mantis guys, Tino and Chris Troy were always like that with me. Really nice. Hammy from Heavy Petting, absolutely lovely guy. You know, and I'm just like, I'm there with my mouth hanging open, thinking, you guys are legends.
Yeah.
You know, so I set a lot of store by people's attitude, because they've done things and they're in a position where they could just as easily say, "Who's this bell end?" You know, I'm not interested. You know, who is he? Get rid of him, sort of thing. But they've always been very, very complimentary and very accommodating and genuinely nice. But I mean, the Avenger guys are a prime example of that. I mean, as you know, we've gigged with Avenger probably more times than with any other bands.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think we first gigged with Avenger at Brofest in Newcastle. The first Brofest in Newcastle, we both played on the Friday night. They were headlining, and we were second last on. And both went down really, really well and what have you. And it was on the back of that Gaz, the drummer from Avenger, Gaz Young, started to contact me and said, "Look, we've got a gig in Trails. Do you want to come and play this gig at Trails?" And it's just grown from that to the point now where I think that, you know, whenever Avenger announce a Newcastle gig, they expect that we're going to be there as well.
Yeah.
It's just it's one of those. It's always a great gig. It's usually packed to the bloody rafters, and both bands go down well. I don't think the bands are alike really. We're probably a little bit lighter than Avenger are. Avenger a little bit more direct in the metal stakes, but we seem to have complemented each other, and we all get along really well. We did a couple of European shows with Avenger, where we took the two bands out in a van, played in Belgium and Germany, and never a crossword, not a problem. Yeah. Everybody got on famously, you know. So stuff like that means an awful lot to me. I mean, you look at the vinyl collection and stuff.
Your vinyl collection, this is what I want to know, because we're nerdy up north and we love nerdy stuff. So I want to know about this, because I know you're a big music nerd. Big music nerd. Tell me.
Yeah.
You collect vinyl and stuff.
Well, I mean, I've been obviously buying, because I said before, I'm an old man now. So I've been buying vinyl since the early 70s. So I was sort of a glam rock guy back in the day, all the way up to about 75. So for me, it was all Slade, T-Rex, Sweet,
Yeah,
Queen,
love
all that
it.
sort of stuff. Yeah. So I always bought 7-inch singles. So I mean, that's
Oh my
just sort
God,
of
look at them.
they're all 7-inch singles. I think I've got everything from Gary. I've got Gary Glitter and Rolf Harris.
Winning.
I've got everything from Benny Hill to Mott the Hoople
That's
in there.
amazing.
You know, but I think the first single I ever bought was Schools Out by Alice Cooper, which was banned. But it sort of grew from that because one of my best friend back in the day had an older brother who was a DJ at Sunderland Mayfair. So by the time I was sort of coming to sort of 1975, it's Christmas 75, I've seen Queen's Christmas concert on the BBC.
Yeah.
That was broadcast on Christmas Eve, so that was when Bohemian Rhapsody was #1, and that sort of blew me away. So Boxing Day, I was straight down to HMV with my voucher, and I bought The Night of the Opera,
Yes.
and I bought a Sweet Live album. Just think.
Oh, you see, this is one of my favorite Queen albums as well.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I bought that on Boxing Day, and that was probably the turning point really, because as I said before, my mate's brother was a DJ at Sunderland Mayfair. He introduced my mate to bands like Free and Zeppelin, Jethro Tull, all that sort of classic rock stuff, I suppose you'd call it now. And then I became friends with this guy, and he introduced me to Zeppelin, which I quite liked. But I was just coming off Spark's Indiscreet album. Remember?
Yeah.
Can you remember Spark? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was just sort of coming off that, and I started listening to Zeppelin. Thought, well, it's okay, and I want to explore it a little bit further, but I don't want to copy him. I mean, my mate was a really Robert Plant lookalike as well, with a long blonde curly hair and all that, you know. So he was full on Zeppelin. I thought, I can't possibly copy him. Anyway, I heard a schoolmate talking about Black Sabbath at school, and he said something about Bloody Sabbath, and what have you. And he said something about there's this bit on this song where the singer shouts, "You bastards!" And I thought, ooh. I might have a listen to that, you know. So Christmas '76, I asked my mother to buy me all of Black Sabbath's back catalogue, and she did. So that was everything from the first Sabbath album to Sabotage, and I got that as my Christmas present. It was probably the worst Christmas I've ever had. It was horrendous. They were so heavy, you know. Some of the stuff was pretty accessible. But some of the stuff was like just completely doom-laden. I'm opening the gatefold sleeve to the first Sabbath album with the inverted cross and the poem about the headless man. I'm thinking, I was only 13. I think, bloody hell.
What have I done?
It was terrifying, you know. And I think, bloody hell, what are we going to do with this? But I persevered. I mean, I remember playing Neil some of the stuff. He just couldn't get away with any of it all. I mean, you know, you wouldn't suffer it. And it sort of grew from there. So sort of, I mean, I forget what the years would have been, but 76, 77 would have been Jailbreak and Frampton Comes Alive, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of buying that, and then my mate comes along and says, have you heard this? Sad Wings of Destiny by Judas Priest. I'm thinking, whoa, what's that? Have some of that, and sort of followed by Sin After Sin, and you go through all the classic rock stuff, and then 78, I'm just out of school, and I find Rush and Van Halen and UFO, and I think, oh, just, you know, brilliant stuff. So it all built around that, and I always bought vinyl until you couldn't buy vinyl anymore, and it became CDs, and then I started buying CDs when I couldn't get vinyl anymore. And then when we reviewed Spartan, when we started doing Spartan Warrior again and started playing festivals abroad, I discovered that most of the festivals had metal markets of all things with vinyl, second-hand vinyl, and there were young people there buying vinyl, and so I'm like, oh, I'll buy some of that, you know. And now I know in the UK there are all sorts of sort of second-hand vinyl shops and record fairs and stuff like that. So I sort of try to I buy new vinyl when there's a new vinyl release that I want, but most of the time I'm on eBay or Discogs or I'm
Yeah.
down in Stockton raking through a vinyl shop, or you know if we go away for a weekend break with my wife, you know I'm in Beverley record shop flicking through the records in the record shop. It's just I just I love it, but I find that I buy I buy a lot of stuff that I missed back in the day. Some of it I just missed, and some of it I wasn't interested in.
Yeah.
So Peter Gabriel, I never liked Genesis at all. I never really gave Peter Gabriel the time of day. In fact, the only Genesis song that I knew was because one of my mates used to sing it in the pub when he was drunk, and I learned all the words, so we'd have a sing song in the pub. I'd never heard Genesis. I didn't know what the song was. He used to sing it. We'd all join in, you know. So that was how I first heard Genesis and Peter Gabriel. But it's only in the last sort of 10 years or so I've started to appreciate what the guy can do, what he can do vocally, what he can do as a lyricist, what he does musically. And as soon as I get that with anybody, I embark upon. I've got to have it all. I can't just have it. I've got to have it all. I want it all now.
Yeah.
You know, I was like Tim introduced me to the Cult a few years ago.
Oh my God, one of my favorites. Yeah.
I only had I bought Pure Cult, the best of when it was released on CD, and it was one of those CDs I sort of flicked through periodically. I picked the odd track, not really bothered, wasn't really a fan. And then Tim joined the band, and he was rattling on about the Cult. Oh yeah, cheeky Satan on it again, you know. There you go. And I thought I'll give it another go. And I think they just released Hidden City.
Mm.
So I bought that. That was my first Cult vinyl, Hidden City. So I bought it and really loved it. I thought, right, cheeky Satan can't be wrong. He wouldn't steer me wrong, would he? He hasn't got a bad bone in his body. He wouldn't lie to me.
No.
He has no evil, no malevolence. So I ended up buying all of the Cult's back catalogue, and I mean everything. So if there was a vinyl release, I've got an original pressing. If there was a not so much for the reissue, but some of the reissues on coloured vinyl, I've got it cut out because I wanted it. I bought every 12-inch single. I mean, you can't say I've got the Cult box set of singles. I've got the rare Cult singles. I've got the outtakes. I've got a shed load of bootlegs.
The rare Cult, yeah.
Yeah, I've got the 50th anniversary of Sonic Temple in Love. I've got a couple of box sets over there. I've even started buying stuff by Circus Diablo that Billy Duffy was in.
Yes. Yeah.
Colour Sound.
Yeah.
Colour Sound with Mike Peters, you know. So
yeah,
I've got a couple of albums for Colour Sound signed by Billy Duffy and Mike Peters as well, up there somewhere. So
do you know?
Yeah, I'm
proper music nerd. I love vinyl, and I think it's something that it's okay to say social media and all these streaming sites and all that, but you cannot have something better than a vinyl. When I went to Sweden to see Priest, and I got their rare limited edition, so it was actually made for the album launch party. It's like a proper pressing of the vinyl. It's got like red and black, bits in it. It's just incredible. I got that there. I had to carry it home on the plane like it was a small baby. It wasn't allowed to leave my clutches. Even as I was put through border force for looking like an absolute mess, this vinyl was not going anywhere because vinyl is so precious nowadays. And I think, it's becoming more and more. I think, like you said, some of the bands that you play with, you'll buy their vinyl and you'll get them to sign it. I've seen you do it. I've seen you do it with Avenger and stuff like that. People are wanting it more and more. Now, I know you guys are doing a new album because obviously you did Help to Pay with this incredible cover on it. I don't know if anybody's knows and seen it, right? I love this t-shirt. It's absolutely incredible. This was like a special artist that did it, wasn't it? It was like a special...
Yeah.
Because that just looks...
It's a guy called Timo Wurtz, Wurz. We did... I wrote the lyrics to Hell to Pay, which is basically about a guy who's been a bit of a cheeky Satan. He's had an interesting and colourful existence, and done many bad things. And it's it gets to the day that he's dying, and he basically recounts all of the bad things that he's done, and he's literally saying to himself, "There's going to be hell to pay now. There's literally going to be hell to pay, you know, for all of my sins. I'm going to go to hell. I'm going to have to pay the price," sort of thing. So that was what the theme of the song was. And when I wrote the lyrics for it, I said to the guys, I've got this image of something not dissimilar to Sabbath Bloody Sabbath.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that when Sabbath did that album, they've got a front cover which is sort of a guy on the bed that appears to be dying, and it's all the whole demonic thing. And on the back is the same scene, but it's an angelic thing.
Yeah.
I said to the guy, well, we need a title for the album. If that's in the running, and we've got to say about what the artwork's going to be. This is what the song's about. Can we get anybody to do that? And we sent the information over to the label. I can only assume that Timo is one of their go-to artists. I did a little bit of research on when he sent the images, because I think he does a lot of digital art. And he sent across a few proofs for the Hell to Pay cover, which pretty much met the brief. Guy on a bed, dying, being pulled this way and that way by rising demons, demons coming down, all that sort of thing. But we specifically asked, he didn't do this on the original artwork. We asked if he could have a sexy demon, a sexy babe crawling across his chest. And we actually wanted it more sexy than that, but he said, no, discretion is the better part of valor and all that, you know.
That's what you're getting.
And that's what you get, an old man, you know. So that's what we got. But it was it's great artwork. I mean,
It's great.
Really, really love it. So yeah, Timo did a great job of that. And there's a couple of songs on the Behind Closed Eyes album. First one's the title track, which is about sleep paralysis.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but it's basically a condition where you can be in bed, fast asleep, and you then have a sense of being completely awake, and yet still a sense that you can't physically wake. Sometimes it's accompanied by people. I think have reported there's something called the hag syndrome. So some people experience an old woman sitting on the chest and strangling them and stuff like that. You know, so it's quite dark stuff. I get that. I don't get the apparition thing. I've never got the apparition thing, but I have had the paralysis, and I have had voices as well. Sort of really intimidating, just really, really frightening stuff. So Behind Closed Eyes came from that, but it was personal to me. But it wasn't something I would have written on the back steps in the rehearsal room in 1983.
Yeah.
You know, it took time to sort of sit and think, well, actually, this is quite a scary experience. I'm going to sort of put it down on paper. And then at the other end of the spectrum, I think the track that closes Behind Closed Eyes is Flesh and Blood, which Neil absolutely hates. It's sort of quite an upbeat number, but lyrically it comes from quite a dark place. Because basically what I was saying to myself was, you're only flesh and blood. You've only got so much time. What you spending all your time worrying about things for?
Yeah,
that's where it came from. So even though it's sort of quite a commercial upbeat song, the underlying thing lyrically was something personal because I was having quite a bad time, and I just thought, when you're going to realise that there's more to life than this, you know?
Yeah.
But that was why I sort of changed my whole approach to writing stuff. I didn't necessarily want to send a message or be clever about things. I just didn't want to throw any old thing out there.
Yeah.
You know? So I think that's I think that's the difference with all of the new material now. I mean, there were a few songs on the Behind Closed Eyes album which came from back in the 80s, stuff like Tear Out Your Heart and Never Take Me Alive. They were both songs that could have gone on Sail and Chains. They were written at the same time, but they're the exception rather than the rule on Behind Closed Eyes. It was largely new material, and I wanted to take my time sort of writing stuff, you know. For me personally, it was pretty much the same sort of approach on the Hell to Pay album. I wanted to do some different things, stuff that either meant something to me or even things I'd read about. I reread Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yes.
Before we did Behind Closed Eyes, and I had read it before, and I had an image in my mind about where Dracula's climbing up the castle wall outside,
Mm-hmm.
and the guy's looking out the window and sees the bat-like creature climbing up the thing. Shadowland came from that on the Behind Closed Eyes album. That was all inspired by Bram Stoker's Dracula, and I haven't done anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a great track as well. So that was something I noticed, the difference between, so I didn't mean to cut you off. I will always do this. The difference between sort of Behind Closed Eyes and some of the other stuff. Like I said at the beginning, it has that sort of more doomy feel. It's very, very a bit more almost edgy, almost like a bit of a goth tinge to it. That
Yeah,
doom.
yeah.
Which makes sense now you said that. Absolutely, because I heard that. So
but just since you mentioned it, I don't know if you're particularly familiar with the cover. It's a black and white cover.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah. That was a Japanese artist it was a guy called Craig Mudd. I always put his name there. It was a guy called Craig Mudd who did this, and I'd written Behind Closed Eyes, which was about sleep paralysis, and Craig Mudd had a whole host of art which was based around the sleep paralysis theme. So usually when people say that with the guy chained to the bar across the top and what have you, they tend to think it's some sort of sadomasochistic thing, which one of the tracks on the album is about. But the cover isn't. The cover is the artist's representation of sleep paralysis,
which fits in so perfectly with the whole. It is a great album. It is a really good album.
There's some nerdy information for you.
Love it. I love it. See, I love all this stuff. This is why I started this. You know, I think, but this is the beauty of your band. I think it'll be so very easy to go, oh, the new wave of British heavy metal. That is it. That's all you get. But it's not. There is that there, but there's also lots of other things. And you're really great live, you know. There's a lot of fun vibe. And you're a really great frontman. And I know I dropped the football thing, but you did actually say that yourself at one of your gigs. I'm either going to be talking about football or sex. One of the two, that's it.
I never said that. I could have possibly have said that. I wouldn't say something like that.
Football, you would never talk about Sunderland Football Club, would you ever?
Not ever, no. Well, yeah. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I mean, I do like my football, and I am a huge football fan. Sunderland is my club because that's where I was born, that's where I live. You can't choose. It's like your family. You can't choose your football team, you know. So that's just how it is through good times and bad. But I was away from football for a very long time, and only went back to it when my son was in his early teens, I would guess. But he didn't last very long because he then discovered girls, skateboard, and guitar. You know, and I ended up either at the match on my own or with my wife. But it's my wife who's a huge football fan, really, much more so than I am. She's down there watching the match now.
Is she? And you're missing it to talk to me, bless you.
I don't mind that, you see, because I'm a football fan to the extent I support Sunderland, and I've got a season ticket, and that's my thing. But my wife is football through and through and through and through, just everything. Monday night football, Tuesday night football, early kick-off Sunday, Saturday, just everything, absolutely everything. She'd sit and watch whatever's on there now for the Euros. I don't care. I'm only interested in the England game, and only then a little bit. But she just laps it all up. It's a nightmare. My obsession's vinyl, her obsession's football. You know what I mean? She's one of our most frequent conversations when she's in front of the TV is watching football, obviously, and she'll say, isn't that so and so who used to play for Aston Villa? I think, I don't know. I've got no idea. I don't know who he is. I don't know who he played for, or who he managed, or which team he's got. I've got no idea. I'm a Sunderland supporter, and that's it. But yeah,
I think
she's a fanatic.
that's so cool, though. That's so cool. I know this is a thing. I think I get asked about football. I am not a massive football follower, but I am Sunderland till I die. And this came up when I was in Sweden. I was in a bar. I was talking to some people, and they were like, "Do you like football?" And I was like, "Yes." And they're like, "What team do you support?" And I was like, "Sunderland." And one of the Swedish people was like, "Sunderland till I die," from across it. And I was like, "It's everywhere. You can't miss it. It's one of those things. It is. It is like a little culty thing that goes along. You know, Sunderland till I die." But at the end of the day, I'm married to a Newcastle supporter, so we won't talk about that because
We, we all have our cross to bear.
So we've got a new album coming out with Spartan Warrior. Obviously, you're recording. I know. Obviously, at the moment, it's probably gonna be one of those processes. Are you bringing everybody in separately to record? Or are you gonna try and do it old school and just record live, or
Yeah, we for the last for the last two albums, Behind Closed Eyes and Hell to Pay, we brought in bass and drums together.
Mhm.
Then we put the guitar, put the bass and drums. We usually do it song by song. So we pick a song, bass and drums, rhythm guitars go down, Dan and Neil, lead guitars go down, and then I come in and make a mess of the whole thing, and job done. You know,
Never.
yeah, yeah. But this time around, I know Neil started recording about three or 4 weeks ago. Tim wasn't available, so Neil decided, well, we're, we're going to move away from what we normally do, and we're going to get Charlie to play to a click. So Charlie's gone into Neil's studio. He's put down the drums for the first track. I don't know whether Neil's plan is to do that on subsequent tracks and put the bass down separately. But my my personal preference would be to get Charlie to get his drums down, Tim to get his bass down for a song, and then just move as we used to do, sort of
Mhm.
track by track, because we haven't even written the full album yet. We've got 6 songs fully completed,
Amazing.
and all manner of others at various stages of completion. I mean, there are another two on the go at the moment. There's a ballad which has surfaced again, which was it's never a planned thing with us. It just seems to happen from album to album. A ballad comes along, and people say that's really good. We've got to put that on, So there's a ballad coming along which needs some lyrics writing for it, and there's another song as well, which Neil is complete, which needs some lyrics. So that'll be 8 songs once once I get round to doing my part. But I can't I can't I can't really influence Neil or any of the other guys for that matter, but particularly Neil in the way that he works, because we've got two completely different mindsets
Mhm.
when it comes to recording, well, especially when it about all sorts of things, but especially when it comes to recording stuff. Because Neil's very much a perfectionist,
Mhm.
and it it can be a great thing because he's somehow able to look ahead and see and hear things that nobody else is seeing and hearing yet. And 99.9% of the time, what he's getting and what he wants everybody else to do is absolutely spot on. But it's just it's it, it's first of all getting him to that point of action, and secondly, and more difficult, much more difficultly in getting him to understand where he's going to draw a line and say that's it, because we've got the luxury of being able to record in the airspace. Neil's got his own studio set up and what have you, so we don't have to rely on anybody else to produce. We don't have to rely upon anybody else giving us studio time.
Yeah.
It's unlimited studio time, and that can be great. But for me, it can be a bit of a hindrance. Um, I mean, I don't I don't know why it is how it is, but it seems to have been the case for this band that anything to do with making things happen falls on me. It's not to say that they need me to do anything. It just tends to. I'm the one with a pointed stick going,
You're the
yes,
glue.
do it.
You're the you're
you
the driving force, the glue. Yeah.
Just poking people, you know. Are you available this week? No, get in the studio. Are you available? Get in the rehearsal. Get in, poke. You know, just all the time. And it can make things a bit touchy at times. Where you can imagine. I mean, nobody likes being sort of micromanaged. But I mean, I know on the Hell to Pay album, and I think we had about four songs down and done. And then Neil came along one day and just said, "That's not good enough." I'm like, "What do you mean it's not? What do you mean it's not good enough? You know, we spent months doing this. You know, what do you want to do?" I think we should start again. I'm like, "Oh, what are you doing? What are you doing to me?" You know. So we sort of went through all of that. But he's the guy in charge. He
Yeah.
He's the musical force behind everything. I mean, Dan's great. Dan's a really good songwriter and a great foil for Neil as well. But Neil's the guy who knows he sort of he doubts himself at times, especially when it comes to recording. He sets himself such a hugely high standard with things, you know. And I think sometimes it's got the potential for being counterproductive.
Yeah.
Certainly it has with the way my mindset is, because my mindset is I want it done. I want stuff done. I want it done yesterday, and I want it done right. I want it to be great. I want it done right, but I want it done, and I want it done now, if not sooner. You know, and that's the way that I am. And Neil's like, well, if it's not good enough, it's not good enough. It's man, and that's how it is. If it's not good enough, it's not getting past me, and that's how our relationship is.
It's a brother argument, isn't it? I can see it's a brother thing as well, isn't it? It's not only just a personality thing, it's a brother thing. You can see it. It's that whole kind of like, you want it your way, I'm not letting it go unless it's like this. But
Yeah.
like I said before, Neil is a musical force. And I have never actually spoke to Neil. The amount of times I've sort of just shuffled up beside and gone, hi, because like off record, as we said, I'm quite shy in public. I don't have a lot of confidence. And I said this to the babes when I had the babes from the crypt on who are fire eaters. I'm not that confident in social situations outside the comfort of my own home. And I think that's just a personality thing. But, Neil is such an amazing guitarist and like play the way he plays, but such a sort of, like you say, you can tell the perfectionist is there by the way that he plays and the solos that he plays and the riffs that he writes and how it's done. But this, this is the tough thing about what you're doing, like you say, managing it yourself. You don't have that pressure of a record label going, you've got to have it out now. It's got to be done today. You must do it now or we're going to fine you or you're going to get this. And that can sometimes also hinder an album going forward. So, and having band members that, there's family things that can crop up. There's all sorts of things that can pop in and just sort of say, right, we're going to have to hold that now. At least you have that luxury of having your own studio. And I know that's benefited a lot of other bands as well. But again, the lack of pressure can sometimes hold an album back.
Yeah.
I mean, again, in the digital era, a lot of things are now just being done very quickly, digitalized. And, they're not, I feel, and I could be wrong because I ain't no musical genius, I feel a lot of things now are just produced with an idea of 20 seconds that are going to get famous on TikTok. There's not a lot of, this great care into writing full songs with full detail and getting them right. And I think the fact that you're still doing that as a band collectively is important. And it's important to the longevity of music because, we're in a throwaway society of music. We're in a digital age where people get a few pennies, if that, from some streams on whatever Spotify site it is. And I don't know if you feel the same way about that. But moving forward as a band, like you said, it's not necessarily now about making money. You can play a festival full of people and come out with a handful of very little to no money because it's a love thing.
But it's everything for me personally is just about breaking even. I mean, I know what goes on out there, and I know that other bands have different agendas the way that I see things. I know that some bands will pay to play, just to the pay the cost of the flights or the ferry and the transport or hotels, whatever it takes to get and just get seen at a festival. I just think that's a very short-sighted way of doing things, and I think that it harms what little there is left of the industry. Because let's face it, I mean, anybody who's putting a festival on, bottom line is they want to break even. If they don't, I mean, they either want to break even or they want to make a little bit of money. Who can blame them for that? I've certainly got no issue with that. But the consequence for them is they have to work to a budget. They have to do all manner of bands out there now, whether it's bands of the genre that we represent or something completely different. There are all manner of the bands that are available to play a gig or a festival.
Yeah.
And promoters can come along and just say, well, what do you want? Well, I want this. Well, what do you want? Well, I want less than that. Where's you going to go? You know what I mean? It's okay. It's okay that there are a lot of fans who want to spend. Taking Spartan Warrior, for example, I mean, I know that there are a lot of people who've been asking us to play a particular festival in Germany. I've got no control over that. It's what the promoter wants to do. You know, whether he wants to book the band or whether he doesn't want to book the band. You know, but I mean, for just about everybody of that mindset at the moment, they've got the pick of all manner of bands who are prepared to come and play on all sorts of different terms. But if you're a band like us who say would love to come and play and make a weekend of it, all you've got to do is cover our expenses, which is by and large what we do. If there's another band who say we'll come and play for free, who's you going to go with? And you can't blame them. But it's not serving the fans who want to see the other bands, and it's not really serving. It's not really serving the industry, really. You know what I mean? I'm not big on the business side of things, and I never have been. It's never been about making any money. But even over the last 14 years, I'll tell you this.
Yeah.
Even within the last 14 years, I've had this band booked to play a festival in Europe and being told that we will feature third on the bill. And then as the festivals approach, I've been told you're not third on the bill now, you're opening up. And when I ask, well, why is that? It's because, first of all, nobody else wants to open up. And secondly, because the two bands above you have agreed to play for free. And they'll only play for free if they can have your slot. You know, and that's how it works. That's just how it works, you know, and it really is one of the few things that really annoys me.
And rightly so.
It just really bugs me because I mean, as far as we're concerned, first and foremost, we want to get out there because it's great fun.
Yeah.
For all of I mentioned before, the travel can be a bit arduous and what have you, but by and large, it's 5 guys out having great fun. We get to go to some great places. We get catered for, have a few beers and a little backstage food, some more than others, but we have a little backstage food, what have you, and we get to play. And then, can you believe it? People come along with albums, old albums, and say, "Would you sign this, please?" When we were in Athens, I pulled up in a taxi outside the club venue for the headline show, and the taxi was surrounded. I thought, what is wrong with you? Well, that's what you deal with in some of these places. and it's it's it, it's greatly appreciated, and it's very humbling, and it's just so nice. It's so nice to get that sort of reaction after all of these years. So as long as you can get there and play the show and break even, I've got no issue with that. But I don't want to go out and play to no one because people can't be bothered to get out of the chair on the Friday night when they go to see a tribute band. That hacks me off. And I don't want to have to constantly put my hand in my pocket to pay to play. It's not fair.
At the end of the day, art is art, and there's this great disrespect for most art genres, not just music, most art genres, that it's expected that you will do it for free. It's not respected in any way, shape, or form. This goes as far as, album design and photography and just about everything else. People want it for free. They don't value it. They don't value the time, the effort, the love, the production, the education that goes into it. Yeah. And I think this is really, really an important thing. Now, I wanted to try and, because I've kept you talking ages, I always say this every episode. I'm sorry, I've kept everybody I have on really talking. You're surviving in such an amazing way. And the fact is, when you do play, you do fill a venue. And no matter where you play, I think, you've mentioned the midweek venues. I know personally, and I'm going to touch on this, and please tell me to go away if it's too personal. I know you've mentioned your hearing problems. Do you find this limits you now? Is this something that, because I actually have damage in my left ear from when I photographed Cannibal Corpse. Do you find this now limits you in your musical enjoyment and capacity, something you love? And do you think it's an important thing for people to wear plugs and to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, my personal problem probably comes from attending gigs as a young kid and just having my head blown off. I mean, I was sort of back in 79 and 80 when Saxon and Motorhead were touring, and I mean, back then, just about every time I walked out of City Hall after a gig, you could literally hear your ears ringing, and they would ring for hours and hours and hours. And like most kids back then, my mother would say to me, you're listening to your hi-fi too loud, you've got the headphones on, it's too loud, too loud, too loud. Playing in a band, of course, does help as well. And I've said to the guys in Spartan Warrior as well, I've got a hearing issue. You guys have all probably got hearing issues to one degree or another. Most people will have as time progresses and they get older. And it can be for all manner of reasons. But in my particular case, I suspect that it's partly to do with being in loud environments.
Yeah.
Whether it's as a gig goer or playing in bands. But my personal issue came about on the back of a summer cold. Can you believe?
Right.
About 6 years ago, I would think it would be 6 or 7 years ago. I picked up a cold in sort of late June, July, one of those horrible summer cold things. And I was out walking my dog and became aware that I forget which one it was, but one of my ears felt completely blocked and everything felt heavy and dull. And after a week or so, the cold cleared up and everything was okay. My hearing came back, no problem at all. And then round about the August, I picked up another cold and it happened again. And then as the week sort of went on and time rolled on a little bit, both ears went. So I ended up going to my doc and spoke to the doc, and I mean, they originally thought it was some sort of blockage, like a wax thing, that some sort of external eardrum thing. But they checked me over, couldn't find anything wrong, so I ended up being referred to the ear, nose and throat department at Sunderland General. And the first thing that happened when I was there, and I knew it would, and I absolutely dreaded the bloody question, was, have you been in any loud environments? I thought, as soon as I say I play in a band, they're going to jump on me and say, well, it's your fault. And this is why, blah, blah, blah. So I told them, and sure enough, that was the response. I was, hang on a minute. I wasn't aware of any problem until I had this cold. And then they looked into it a little bit more. they checked my nose. I had nasal polyps in both of my nostrils.
Yeah.
So the first thing they said was that might be causing an airflow problem into the eustachian tube, causing a build-up of fluid behind the eardrums. That's sort of most likely. They said you might have a you might have a condition that a lot of kids suffer from called glue ear.
Glue ear.
Yeah. So they sort of looked into that. They booked me in for some surgery. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I had surgery on my nose to have these polyps removed, and some. I still use a nasal spray to sort of keep that clear as best I possibly can, stop them coming back. But what they discovered was I had a glue-like fluid behind both of my eardrums. So the first port of call was to put some tubes, some grommets, to try and have get the fluid to drain. It's supposed to drain down, but it wasn't going down, so it had to come out.
Oh no, brutal.
Yeah, just horrendous. I actually went through a phase where I could whistle Roger Whittaker songs through my ears. I just had to block my nose and blow, and it would sort of whistle through my ears, But all this glue would come out, and I ended up having 3 or 4 surgical procedures under general anaesthetic to have that done. Because apparently, when they were doing all these examinations, I've got very narrow ear canals. I've got these massive ears, these huge flappers, right? But I've got very narrow ear canals, So I'm cursed with big lugs, but I've got very narrow ear canals. Anyway, they put these grommets in. The fluid kept draining off, but I kept getting infections. So I'd end up with sort of internal and external bleeds, which were horrendous. In fact, when we played at Trillions, I won't do it here, but next time we meet, I'll show you a photograph. I came off stage at Trillions, and I took a photograph, and there was blood and glue.
Oh God bless you.
Yeah, and I mean,
you were that proper showman.
Yeah, that was a real worry, But the long and the short of it was, I ended up seeing a number of consultants. I was at the Freeman most recently, and had another procedure where they put a balloon up your nose into your eustachian tube, and they inflate it to try and open everything up, and everything drains away. But that was a bit of a last resort, a long shot, and it didn't work. So they ended up saying, well, it is what it is. You've got this fluid behind your ears. You're high risk of infection, internal bleeds, which could be really, really damaging. So we don't want to do any more procedures. It's hearing aids for you, my boy. Yeah. So now I've got hearing aids. I'm in a fortunate position where every day can be different.
Yeah.
So some days my hearing is really, really dull and heavy. Other days it's not quite so bad. If I'm in a restaurant or a bar, I tend to find if I haven't got the hearing aids in, I really, really struggle to hear what's in front of me. If I put the hearing aids in, I'm like something like James Bond in The Spy Who Loved Me or something. Because I can hear for miles. I actually sat in an Indian restaurant once with my wife. I hadn't had the hearing aids long, and I was sort of adjusting the volumes and the levels and stuff, and trying to get used to it, and I couldn't hear what anyone around the table was saying, but I could hear what the waiters were saying at the bar on the other side of the room. And I said to my wife, "Mind the guy at the far side of the room? Can you see the guy over there? Yeah, the waiter that came to the table. Yeah. He's just said you've got a fat arse." He didn't, of course, say anything of the kind, but I could literally hear what was going on at the far side of the room, but not what was on around me. And it's a bit of a work in progress at the moment. I mean, I've not worn them in a live setting. I've worn them in a live setting. I tend to wear them in rehearsals because we usually rehearse in the studio, so we don't rehearse in volume. everything goes through Pro Tools, and my vocal doesn't even have a microphone. I just sort of sing dry over the top of the band while they're coming through all manner of gubbins, you know. But I have worn hearing aids in that scenario, and on a good night when I'm feeling okay, it's a little bit like having in-ear monitors in, and
Yeah.
it's great because I can turn the volume up or down to suit me, and I can hear my voice, I can hear what the guys are doing, and I tend to get a bit of a live vibe off that because my volume in me sort of directly in the ears is greater than what they've got in the room, and you can sort of build a little bit of a buzz on that, a bit of a live feel. But I did find free hearing aids when we did the Hell to Pay album. That was quite tough at times because my hearing obviously wasn't great. At times I had infections and I was wearing headphones in the studio, you know, and it really didn't matter. I mean, Neil was sort of saying I'm maxed out on the volume and I can't hear anything.
Yeah.
But he's sort of maxed out, you know, and I think, well, I have to come back another day if that's the case, you know. So, well, that's basically where my hearing problem is. I think historically there's a little bit of a gig go playing in a band, so be careful, guys, with your ears.
Yes, look after them from me as well. Yeah, just look after them.
Absolutely. No, listen to what your mum says when your headphones are too loud. I didn't. I sort of paid the price, I suspect. But the other side with me is I do have this glue ear thing, which has manifested itself about 55 years later than it should have, and I'm sort of stuck with it now, you know.
Which is awful.
It is. I mean, I did wonder if it would finish me with a band, and I did sort of warn them as much. But I mentioned before that I did promise I wouldn't be the one to go. So as long as I can, I will. But it's bound to be in the back of my mind that, you know, is continuing to do what I do going to cause a greater problem? I mean, we've got a live rehearsal in Newcastle tomorrow night, so the guys will be loud. I mean, when they play, they are loud, really loud. I think they're louder in rehearsals than they are live for the most part. Absolutely blasting, you know. And I've got a choice to make as to whether to put plugs in or my hearing aids in, you know. And you do sort of wonder in that sort of situation whether or not you're punishing yourself more than you really should. But
it's a tough decision. Like I mean, mine comes from, like I said, it was from Cannibal Corpse. I had a choice. I'd left my plugs in my carrier bag. My carrier bag. So when I used to work at festivals, I had a carrier bag with all my photography about to come out. Not the loudest bands to forget your plugs on ever. And I made the very stupid, now looking back, choice that I was going to go and do it. I wasn't missing it. So I went out, and I kid you not, and I joke not, and anybody who was at that Bloodstock festival that year will back me up. Every photographer who was in that pit was, their ears, whether they had plugs in or not, was ringing from that show. And some of us were a little bit poorly after that as well, because it was very loud and very bassy. But from that day on, this ear has never stopped ringing. It never stopped ringing. Again, I photographed another band, Killing Joke, and it's not the band's fault. It was my own entire fault. I did not take my plugs. You know, wear your plugs, make sure you're safe. I have asked you a lot of questions about the band and stuff, and I've asked you a lot of personal questions. When I wrap up, and I always drop this on my guests, you know, because I've already mentioned you're playing out at Trillions in August the 9th, and I know you've got a few other gigs, I think Grantham coming up and stuff like that. If you get a chance to see these guys, you have to. You absolutely have to. Not just because my uncle plays bass, but they are just great live. I love you guys so much, and it's good fun. You know, the sound is great. And I've seen a lot of your shows. I still come along. It's not like I've gone, oh, I've seen them, I'm not going to come along again. When I wrap up, obviously, what I definitely do is drop this on somebody. I've asked you a personal question. You now have a free shot to ask me anything. This has led to me eating fire and everything. Anything you want to ask me, you can challenge me, anything. I'm
not going to give you a challenge because I think that will be unfair when the challenge isn't reciprocated. and I'm a scaredy cat and I don't want to be challenged.
You're going to eat fire.
I mean, one of my bugbears is the apathy of some people to come out and see original bands live. I don't care whether it's older guys like us or new guys on the up, new guys starting out. It seems to have been a situation in recent years where a lot of people are only content to come out on a Friday or Saturday night to see an Iron Maiden tribute band or a Guns N' Roses tribute band. And I'm starting to see that some of these tribute bands are touring and charging £25 a ticket for the privilege of going to see them. In some instances, where the original band is still active as well, I've got no problem with the musicality, the musicianship of the guys who are doing this. I just don't understand what an audience's perspective is about this. I'll get to the question in a minute.
No, you're fine. You talk.
But when I was a young guy, and I mentioned best friend of mine was a DJ at Sunderland Mayfair. I mean, he was a really knowledgeable guy, very much into his music, obviously, and what have you. And I used to go drinking when I was about 16 in Sunderland Town Centre, and just starting off on getting into all this sort of stuff. And I used to knock about with a very eclectic bunch of people. And my mate's older brother used to call them weekend hippies. And at first, I didn't understand what he meant. But what he was really saying was that these are people who live the lifestyle on Saturday and Sunday. They don't live the lifestyle any other day of the week. They go home to the suburbs. They have the jobs and they do all of the job things and the household things. And he was effectively saying they were all top show on a weekend. They have this weekend lifestyle, and it's all very false. Now, I've personally got no problem with people coming out on a weekend and living the lifestyle on the weekend. I'm nowhere near as harsh as that. What I don't understand is why folks won't turn out on a weeknight to see a good band, sometimes for free, sometimes for very little door money, but they'll pack a place on a Saturday night to watch a Guns N' Roses or a Thin Lizzy tribute band. I don't understand it. I just wonder what your take would be on that.
Yeah, and it's a really great question, and thank you, because I like this question. I mean, my take is, I think over the years that I have worked with bands and over the years of bands I've seen, over the friendships that I have built, I agree that people don't respect that. They don't actually respect maybe going to see a band for what they are. Some of the best bands I've discovered have been either by accident, because I've walked into a pub and they've sounded absolutely amazing, or, you know, I've found them in different ways. I am not a big tribute band fan. It's one of the things that I am not a big fan of. I think I can count on probably two tribute bands that I have enjoyed. The Dress to Kill tribute band by Kiss, they are fantastic live, and they were a joy to work with, and they were lovely. You know, the rest probably a push. You know, I'll go and see them if I can. I think for me, my view is you go and see what you have in your local area. We have some excellent bands at the moment that if you don't go to a pub and see them, you're probably not going to catch on. Even sort of newer, you know, you have LN, who are this amazing, like, Viking pagan metal band. They supported Raven. Like, they are...
I saw them at the Raven gig, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they are just fab. Right, they've got this real vibe about them, you know, and you know they're up and coming. Ellen, who is the front of Ellen, is also in Manners, which is an up-and-coming metal band, like metalcore band. They're great. They're very different. I was at their very first gig at Head of Steam. I mean, I understand I'm a mom, right? So I understand there's restrictions to maybe getting out on a weekday at some points in your life. But for most of my 20s, and then now I am out and about. If, say, like I've been to see you guys at Trillions on a Thursday, Saturday, and Wednesdays, I think I've been to see you. I think if you can, you've got to embrace that enjoyment of what's local and look at the local bands that you have, whether they're new, whether they're long-standing, and look at your local environment and look at what's coming. You know, I nearly missed out on Priest, a great example. I nearly missed out on the Priest gig because I didn't buy advance tickets. They supported the Death Stars, and it was about a week beforehand. I then realised, actually, I can do that gig, so let's go. It was a whim. Do you know? I found a really great band. There's other bands that I've found, like Forstellan, who have been around for a really long time, but are still up and coming, and they're still working towards it. Go look at what's on at like your Head of Steam at Trillions, and not just covers bands, because you hear this stuff all the time. That's mainstream. You know, you hear it on the radio. I mean, it's nice. It's nice to see a cover band. You know, there's these fake festivals that are about, and everybody loves them when you get all these bands on. And don't get me wrong, some of them bands are incredible.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Whitley Bay Playhouse gets a few on. I think that had the Rock Show on, which has Phil Sloan, who plays guitar for them. He's an amazing guitarist. You know, no discredit to that. But my view is people aren't, and this is part of the reason I started this, people aren't not just looking big, but they're not looking local, and they're not looking at what's there.
Yeah.
And they're not going out on a weeknight because they're too scared. It's a, you know, a school night. Yes, we all work. We have to work. It's awful. Most of these gigs are wrapped up by 10 o'clock. As my husband kindly pointed out to me, I'm usually still ratting around the house, hoovering up and dusting at 10 o'clock on a night time. So if you look at it, are you really losing out? Do you know? And that is my honest opinion. There's a lot of bands that are also, and excuse me saying this, that have forgotten where they came from and how they started. There's a band coming, I'm not going to name them and shame them because I really do like them as a band, but I remember paying £5 to see them when they were part of a tour, and they said, you know, it's really important we keep ticket costs low, and we endeavour that, you know, people get to see us and things like that. And I looked for tickets the other day, and their tickets were nearly £40, which I understand things have cost more, and, you know, £5 is not a reasonable ticket venue and stuff, and the venues cost a fortune. I know the music industry very well. But can I afford £80 when the cost of living is so high? Whereas you can go to Trills and see a band that is good, that you're going to get as much fun generally out of. You're going to meet some hellishly good people and probably pay £10, maybe £15 entry. Maybe you buy a t-shirt to support them because merch is really bloody important to bands, and make friends. And you're probably going to get, you know, a bit of a closer show, and it's a good laugh. Do it. And I've probably waffled, but that's my take. I think not enough people are embracing what we have. And what we have, and I said this before in another interview, what we have in Newcastle. Babes from the Crypt, I don't know if you've heard of them. I did an interview with them. Yeah. Their shows are amazing. And you can pick up a ticket for their show, generally for about £12, £13. And seeing them perform and what they do, you know, they're high risk, you know, they got me fire eating. It's not an easy thing to do. Like, and going and seeing that was a great show, you know, it was a really good, So people need to take advantage of what they have and go and see those bands. And I think the last 2 gigs I've seen it's been free entry, you know. Go to it. Go hang out. Go see people. You're going to find something you love and enjoy and have a little bit of a night out, and you feel better the next day. But tribute bands, not to knock them, I know it's cheaper than going and seeing the real thing. And sometimes in some cases you ain't going to get to see the real thing. But they're not for me.
Yeah. Just to be absolutely clear, I've got no problem with tribute bands in terms of their ability and musicality. There are absolutely some fantastic bands out there.
Yeah.
The reason I asked the question was I'm questioning why it would be that gig-going folks are reluctant to turn out to support original bands and would rather see a tribute band. And that's what I don't get.
The fear of the unknown.
Fear of the unknown, yeah, maybe.
People like comfort, don't they? People watch the same telly program over and over again.
Yeah.
And I personally, if you want, I mean, probably if I waffled and got mistook the point there, but I think people will. I'm guilty of this. I'll watch Star Trek any day of the week. I've seen them all a million times. I'll watch it any day of the week.
Yeah.
But people are almost scared of finding new stuff. They want the comfort of the same songs that can go and sing along to. However, you go see a band once, and then the next time you see them, you know their stuff. And then it becomes a comfort. And then you can go and see that band 5-6 times, and then it's cool, you know, it's there. Don't be frightened. And that's my thing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
The reason I asked the question is I genuinely worry that folks are going to lose what they have. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm 62. I had a 62nd birthday last month. And I'm not going to be around forever, and it doesn't matter that much to me. It probably doesn't matter very much to very many people. But there's a wealth of talent out there who rely upon your support. There are a wealth of music venues out there who rely upon people's support, and if we don't support those up and coming bands, if we don't support those venues, we will be left with an Iron Maiden tribute band on a Saturday night. That's what we have to look forward to, guys. So support your local venues, support local music.
Yes, we have so much. And I said this again in another interview, we have so much. We have so much good stuff. We have so much heritage, and we have so much up and coming good stuff. And this is again why I started this. You know, my idea was not to, I could have started something and gone, right, I just want to try for big bands and that's all I'm going to have on. The idea is to get everybody on that is influential and that means something, you know, meaningful. And mentioning LN was quite important because, like you said, you saw them with Raven, you know, they have this thing about them, you know, that's like, it's cool. You're not going to find that if you don't go and see them.
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to find your babes if you don't go and see them. Get yourselves out, you know, go support those local venues. Trills has only lasted so long because people go. We've lost so many good venues, and we have some other ones, like, I don't know if you've been to the Grove. The Grove's a great music venue. That's really great. Yeah.
That was the Quayside.
No, might have been. Grove's actually Biker. Oh, there you go, Biker Grove. It's just off of near the climb. For everybody who's local, near the climbing wall. It's sort of just down Stepney Bank. Yeah.
My wife was there recently with a friend to see Tom Smith, Sunderland guy.
Yeah.
He played there. I was down with the Quayside watching the Choir Boys, but she was up at the Grove watching Tom Smith.
So separate nights out. See, Choir Boys as well. Yeah. We're blessed. Let's not lose it. That's why this podcast exists, because I saw what was happening. Dave, you have been an absolute joy, a legend. I love seeing you live, and it's been great to actually have a proper conversation with you rather than me just standing there going, hi. So next time I walk in, I go, hi, and just go, shut up, I know you. Thank you so much for your length of... Go on.
No, it's absolutely my pleasure. We'll have a proper get-together in a proper drink on the 9th of August. I'll probably see you then, no doubt.
Oh, obviously, yes. And it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. And, you know, like I said, I'll put the dates out on my social media, on the Gigs Up North Instagram, and this goes out on Nerdy Up North. Please, obviously, tune and watch it. Check out these guys. You can get them on most streaming sites anyway and buy the stuff. Go to the Short Trillions. Come and say hi to me and go, I saw your interview. And then go and say hi to Dave while I stand at the back going. Thank you so much, Dave. Over and out from Gigs Up North. Obviously, behave, be good. If you can't behave, don't get caught. All right? See you later.